This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario.
Hi, everyone. It is Rebecca, and Tara is here with me, of course. And I wanted to just mention that I was looking at YouTube and the Poptimists account, and he was answering the questions for the mid-year book freakout tag. And there are 13 questions about what you've read for the first 6 months of the year. And yeah, right. I said that right. Yes, first 6 months of the year. And Tara and I were going to talk about what we read for the first 6 months. And we thought, oh, these questions look kind of fun. So we thought we would do those. I will just go ahead and get started. And the first one is number one is the best book you've read. So the first half of 2022. So for me, it's Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. And as many of you know, that was a Canada Reads book that Tara and I both really absolutely loved. So when I went through the list of everything I've read so far this year, it stood out by a mile for me. So that's my best book I've read. How about you, Tara?
Mine, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to give you best fiction and best nonfiction since I've been reading more nonfiction. You can add in your nonfiction.
I can. Okay, I will after you.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, so my best fiction is one that we have actually we are interviewing the author soon, right? Is The Undertaking of Billy Buffone by David Giuliano. I loved that one. So that's my favorite fiction so far. I had a lot of fictions. Like I've had a really good year where I've been happy with all my books so far, but that's my favorite. And my favorite nonfiction is On Account of Darkness by Ian Kennedy, who we interviewed.
Yeah. Okay. Those are both really good choices. And I was just looking through my list really quickly of my nonfiction. And I have a feeling, okay, I think I'm actually going to pick another one that I read this year. I loved On Account of Darkness. Absolutely 100% loved it. But the book that I started the year with was Blue Sky Kingdom, An Epic Family Journey to the Heart of the Himalaya by Bruce Kirkby. And they had reached out and asked if we wanted to read the book or if I wanted to read the book. And I said, absolutely, because I've always loved mountain books and that kind of thing, mountain adventures, especially that part of the world. And it was just an amazing story about how he and his wife and their two kids, I think it was, they go to the Himalaya and they just live this really simple life in a monastery. And that whole experience, I loved it. And I think you read it too, right?
I did. And I actually really enjoyed that one too. Yeah.
So that kind of just fits into something that I've always really loved, are those kinds of stories about the mountains. So yeah.
Okay. So our second category, best sequel. So for me, this would be, it's not a Canadian book. It's Us Against You by Fredrik Backman, which is the sequel to Beartown. I loved it.
Okay, what was that one about? I don't think I know that you read that.
Small town in, oh my God, is it? Oh, people are going to be annoyed at me. I can't remember if it is Sweden or Norway.
Okay.
One of the Iceland. But about a hockey team in a very small town, and that's kind of the only thing that the small town has going for it is the hockey team. And in the first book, something happens that kind of breaks the town apart into two sides. Basically, you're either for the hockey team, or if you take the other side, you end up being against the hockey team. Anyway, something happens that splits the town in two. And the sequel is kind of the reconciliation of the town, almost to a point. Okay. It's beautiful. It's got great characters. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. Both of them.
Yeah, I'll have to add those to my list because Beartown I was aware of, but I didn't know there was a sequel. So that's interesting.
Yes. I think there's a third one too. I'm not sure. I have to look into it. And it's cold, Rebecca. It's the winter. It's cold. You love cold.
You know I love those books. Yeah, absolutely. Well, my best sequel, and normally it's hilarious because I really rarely read sequels. There's two series that I read. I read Sarah Pretsky's V.I. Warshawski books and also Val McDermott's Tony Hill and Carol Jordan mysteries. but those are the only sort of sequels books, ongoing series I read. But this one I read was Republic of Dirt, A Return to Wofield Farm. And it was the Wofield Poultry Collective was the first title.
Yes.
And it was funny because I know the author will never hear me say this, but I've never really loved a book where I didn't like the main character.
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
but in Wofield, I really can't stand the main character, but I love all the other characters. So
Yeah.
when I read the sequel, they've sort of moved on, and they're just really well fleshed out characters, and I love them all except for the main character. And I hoped that the main character in the second book would have had some, clarity about who
Yeah.
she is and how she moves through the world, and she has zero. So it's all
Mm.
good. I still love
Yeah.
the characters.
I had the same feeling because I read the first one as well, the Wofield. I haven't read the second one, but I love the first one, except for the main character. She's
Yeah.
she's so unlikable and there's no growth. So when you said that
Yeah.
she's the same in the second book, I'm like, really? I'm going to read the sequel
Yeah.
because, like you, I loved the rest of the characters.
Yeah. And I did.
Really.
And I will tell you that the others continue to grow, and you're just like, oh, I love these characters. And it's like,
Hmm.
I wish I could ask the author and say, do you realize that your character had no growth? She's like unlikable and she had no growth, but anyway, whatever. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's see. Oh, the new release you haven't read but want to. And I have to say, this is a kind of a goose egg for me because I'm a real mood reader. So I
Hmm.
don't look forward to books like, new releases. Like, I don't pay attention to that too much. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
aware of them, but I don't have anything I'm looking forward to. How about you?
I have just the Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John
Oh,
Mandel.
yeah.
But I'm the same way. I have a little bit of mood. I have a list. I have my books going that, it's just, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's just random. I'll pick off something from the TBR list. So unless I have like a favorite author that I know has a new book coming out in like the fall or something, generally I'm not I just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I read her book Station 11. It was a Michigan like book of the year kind of thing where everybody was
Hmm.
supposed to read it. I can't remember what they call that, but I read it, and it was set in Michigan, which is, so
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons we were like, "Oh, let's read this." And I actually I liked it, but I don't love it. Like, I thought it was
Yeah.
fine, but it wasn't as good as I was anticipating. But anyway, so yeah. Did you read
I
it?
enjoyed
Station
that.
11? Yeah.
Yep. I think I read it twice actually. So I really enjoyed it.
Oh, wow.
I enjoyed her. The Glass Hotel was her most recent one, right? From a
Mhm.
couple of years ago, I mean.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And so I'm looking forward to this one. I think there's a lot of hype to her books
Mhm.
sometimes. And I think a lot of hype is good for marketing and selling of books. But sometimes if you're a reader, I'm the type
Mhm.
of reader that hype doesn't work well for me.
I
I always
agree.
often find I end up being underwhelmed if a
Yeah.
book has a lot of hype.
And that is a really good point, which I think that's maybe why maybe my expectations were too high for Station 11,
Yeah.
or they were off a little bit because, again, it was the book that everybody in Michigan was supposed to read that year.
Yeah.
And when I read it, I was like, "Oh, okay." Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So having that little bit of discussion, so the next one was most anticipated release for second half of the year. I actually do have a book for that after saying
Ooh.
that sometimes I don't really have anticipation. But this one I'm looking forward to. It's coming out at the end of August, and I actually did my first pre-order for it. The author is on Instagram. It's Bianca Marais, and she did a great job of marketing her book herself. Like I was just taken
Ooh.
in by it, and it's called The Witches of Moonshine Manor. And I just know it's about a group of older women who are witches, and I was just like, I'm in. And the way she marketed, I was like, I'm totally in. I did my first pre-order for it. I'm really looking forward to receiving it at the end of the summer.
Okay, while you were saying that, and I'll have to look into
Yeah.
that one because I don't know anything about that one, but it made me realize I am at first I was like, I'm not really looking forward to anything. I can't think of anything. But then I remembered
Yeah.
Ali Hassan's book is coming out in the fall.
Yes.
Is There Bacon in Heaven? And it says
Yes.
Indigo's most anticipated Canadian book. Now, here's the thing. I
Yeah.
sent him a comment on his post on his Instagram, and I said, "Hey, can you pre-order?" And he said, "Yes." And he put it out there, and you can save 30% right now. However, I went to try to order it, and of course, the book was going to cost me more with shipping to Michigan than the cost of the
Yeah.
book. So I thought, okay, I'm going to wait till I go to Canada and I will just purchase the book. So I probably won't get it until it is out in the fall. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't even think about that. I do have one I'm anticipating that I'm excited about. So cool.
I'm adding that to my list too. I'm terrible. I'm always adding seconds and thirds whenever we do something like this. But yes, I
Same here.
forgot about that one. And what's annoying is I actually did like a Google search for Canadian books, anticipated books coming out in the fall 2020, and I got nothing. So I'm like, why
Oh,
did that not pop up? I'm obviously
that's,
not very good at doing my Google searches, but
yeah.
that's on my list.
Oh,
Here, I just did a quick Google of that book that I told you about, The Witches of
yeah.
Moonshine Manor.
Hmm.
And as a quick description, it says 5 octogenarian witches gather as an angry mob threatens to demolish Moonshine Manor. I just
Sounds
love the
really,
idea of octogenarian witches. So that's why I was
yeah.
like, yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
have to look into that one too. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not even aware of that one. So,
Mm,
okay. Now, biggest disappointment. And I really,
mhm.
Tara and I have talked about this before. I don't really like to bash authors because, and I'm going to let Tara say why you don't, because I love your reasoning, what you
Oh,
said about,
okay.
yeah.
Because even if I don't enjoy a book, I still personally have not written a book, and that person has. So I still appreciate the fact that they have written and published a book. And maybe the book is not for me, but it may be for someone else. It is for someone else. And I don't want like my negativity to influence someone not picking up the book when it could be the book for them.
And I could not have said that ever as well as she said it. And that I agree 100%, which is why I don't generally go on and if I read something and I don't really like it, I don't tell people I don't like it because at the end of the day too, unless you know me really well, how do you know that my opinion has any value, right? And I
Yeah.
realized, we're doing a podcast where we're hyping books and stuff, but still I always feel like it's the people closest to you that will kind of know whether you would like something or not. And anyway, so yeah, I don't like to hype. I mean, I don't like to say bad things. However, I am going to mention this book because I was really kind of disappointed, but it's actually a juvenile book because I'm a former youth and teen librarian. And as much as I love adult books and I especially love nonfiction, I still read kids' books. I read novels, I read picture books all the time. And I read this one called it was a graphic novel called Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulsen. And it was funny too because somebody had put it on their Instagram account and I read it and I thought, "Oh my gosh, it's all about these vegetables that are worried that these vampires are going to take over their community or something." And I just thought, "Oh, I love anytime you take an inanimate object and you make it animate. I think that's hilarious, and especially vegetables." So I thought it would be really cute and it did not live up to the hype for me at all, and I actually thought I probably would not necessarily recommend this to children. Well, maybe kids would like it, but as an adult who loves young people's books, this just didn't do it for me, and I was really kind of disappointed. So that's my biggest disappointment. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I've heard of that one actually. So, um, my biggest disappointment, I actually don't mind, having said what I just said last, I don't mind putting this out there because this is not going to affect her sales whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it would be the newest Outlander book by Diana Gabaldon.
Hmm.
So, Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone. I still enjoyed this book, but it's a hunker of a book. It's like 900 pages. I don't think it needed to be that long, and not much happened. Having not you know what I mean? Like, not much happened
Yeah.
until the last 100 pages,
Oh
and
man.
then what happens at the end is left unresolved as a, what's it called? You know,
Cliffhanger kind of
cliffhanger
thing. Yeah.
for the next book, which is fine. Like, so I still enjoyed it. I still loved going back into the world of Claire and Jamie, and as I'm reading, like, the details of how they dig a trench for an outhouse, I'm still enthralled. But but does it really need to be there? No. So that would be my only biggest disappointment, is that there just was maybe not enough action, but I still enjoyed it.
And I've never read any of those books because they're mostly really long books, and I just don't have I have a short attention span, so I already know that even if I got through the first one, I wouldn't continue. So I
Yeah.
haven't even gone there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm still full on in. I'll read the next one.
Yeah.
I will keep on going because I do love them,
Yeah. Cool.
but maybe it's my biggest disappointment because it's the one that I was most anticipating too, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to biggest surprise. Mine would be, so we read this book for the podcast, and it is I Am Billy the Kid by Michael Blouin. It's a Western about Billy the Kid, and I am not a Western reader generally. I won't search them out. But we read this when he contacted us. We were in, it sounded really interesting, and I end up loving it. I thought it was a great book.
Okay, that was my choice for biggest
Really?
surprise as well, because
Good.
yeah, because I'm in the same way. I'm not really a big Western fan, and especially now the trope is pretty can be pretty controversial in terms of
Hmm.
how Native Americans or indigenous peoples are treated and portrayed and everything. So yeah, I'm not a big fan, and when he reached out to us, at first I was kind of like, it's a kind of a Western, but it's a revisionist Western. It has a
Hmm.
strong female character in it. And that
Yep.
is what drew you and I, was this female character. And yeah, we loved it. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really highly recommend this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So next one is number 7 is favorite new author. And I have to admit, I'm not somebody who again, I'm a mood reader, so I don't necessarily have an author that I love so much that I'll just run out and like read all of their canon. I just don't do that, except for, as I said, those 2 mystery writers that I really enjoy, and it's really escapist kind of stuff. But I don't really have a favorite author in that way. So I couldn't even say I have a favorite new author. So how about you?
Oh, okay. No, I do. Mine is Mary Lawson. So I
Oh
read,
yeah.
we read Town of Solace at
Hmm.
the end of 2021,
Yeah.
and we both loved it. I loved it. And so now I'm going back. Like I enjoyed it so much that I will go back into her backlist. And I am actually currently reading Crow Lake by her. So I would say she has become one of my new favorite authors.
And I have to say, she doesn't qualify for me as a new author. I probably would have mentioned her, except she's not new to me. I read
Hmm.
Crow Lake before, and so that's why I couldn't include her as a new favorite author. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I love her books so
Yeah.
much. I can't. And I when I was visiting you, I at your different drummer bookstore,
Yes.
I picked up one of the books of hers that I didn't have, and I honestly I can't remember the title of it,
Oh,
but I
that's
have that one.
right.
Yeah, I have that one too to read as well, so I'm
Yeah,
excited
because
about
I
that.
picked up Crow Lake at the same time, and you picked up one of her
Yeah,
other
which I
books.
can't remember which one it is, yeah.
Me either.
Okay, let's see, it's you next, I
Oh,
guess,
yes.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to switch this one up. So it's
Mhm.
newest fictional crush. I do not have a new fictional crush based on the books I've read this year. However, I
Mhm.
I will put my non-fictional crush, and it's not new, but it is only enhanced, and it is Wob Canoe, who is the leader of the NDP party in Manitoba. And I am currently reading his memoir, The Reason You Walk. I loved him before. I love him even more now. I think I love his family, his wife, his sister. I would love for either one of them to write a book because they seem also like fascinating people. So, yep, it's my crush has only deepened for Wob.
This is hilarious because when I was in Toronto one time, I picked up his book, The Reason You Walk, and I read it a few years ago. And so I'm going to include him, even though he's not he's not a fictional crush. He's my crush too, because even though I live in Michigan, I follow him on social media. When he gives those political speeches on his Instagram, I
Hmm.
watch the whole thing. I don't know what's going on in Manitoba, but I watch him religiously.
Yep.
And I don't know a whole lot about his family, but I've seen him with his kids and stuff. And I have a huge crush on him because that book, The Reason You Walk, I was telling Tara, and I even told you what page number it's on. I
Yeah.
actually took a screenshot. I think it might actually be the last page, but I took a screenshot of it because in the book he's talking about his father is dying and his relationship with his father. And my dad's really pretty old and he's getting, he's winding down and stuff. And so that book really spoke to my heart. And that last page, oh my Lord, it was just so beautiful. It was
Yeah.
so poetic. And so, yes, I have a huge crush on Wab Canoe. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that
It's
up because I
amazing.
would never have thought of him. But yeah, that's
I
hilarious.
think I only thought of it because I'm like, I looked through my list of books that I've read so far this year, and I'm like, there's lots of new characters in there that I love, but ones that I would call like a crush, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no. And then I'm like, looking, I'm like, oh, look, there's Wob sitting right beside me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then we'll have to think about that like along like if you have any fictional crushes at all, I think we should talk about that at some point in the future because I was thinking more just this year, but then it would be kind of interesting to think about if we have them. Oh, I already know who one of my fictional crushes is. Oh,
Yeah, I know one
we'll do
mine
that.
too.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Let's not forget to do that at
Okay.
another
Okay.
podcast. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
do have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. It just dawned on me.
Oh,
And
now I can't wait to find out.
I've talked about him before on past podcasts, and I just have a huge crush on him. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
All
now I got.
right. Now let's see. Oh,
Okay.
number 9. We're down to number 9 already. Newest favorite character. So of the books I've read this year, I have to say, for me, it was Washington Black because he was, and again, that was a Canada Reads book by Essia Dugan. And what I loved about Washington Black is he is born into slavery. His life, the beginning of his life is just so awful. And then his world just completely blows up and he has the most fantastical, amazing life. And he takes advantage of every possible thing that he can. And he's such a memorable character. Like I will never forget him as a character and I think of him too. Like when I think of him, I always picture him up in the Arctic. Like that was because that would have been so foreign to him, that
Yeah.
landscape. And that's the landscape that speaks to me when I think of Washington Black and how he must have just for the first time seen it and just been kind of blown away by it all. So I love him. Absolutely love him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. My newest favorite is Emmeline from The Spoon Stealer by Leslie Crew.
I can't wait
which
to read
was
that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you haven't read it yet, right?
I can't get it.
Okay.
I can't. I'd have to
Oh,
buy it
that's
because I can't
right.
get it here. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to
But go
buy
ahead.
it for you.
Okay. Thanks.
So I loved her. I loved her by page 7 of this book. I have it written down in my notes. I was in love with her.
Oh,
It's sometimes the book. I love the book, but she is the book, and she is an older woman, and she's just the way she faces everything that she has faced in life with such humor and positivity. I loved. And sometimes it could border on a little sentimental, but I was okay with that. And as you got deeper into the book, you realized the she needed that positivity because she'd been through so much. Anyways, and I loved her. I just loved her attitude, and yeah. So she's my newest favorite one.
yeah. I was so disappointed because I checked all my libraries. I checked for physical copies. I checked for e-copies, and I can't get it. And so it's one of those things. When I buy Ali Hassan's book, I can also buy the Spoon Stealer. So when I get to Canada
Yes.
the next time, I'm going to make sure those are the 2 books I buy for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. A book that made you cry. For me, easy. Scarborough by Catherine Hernandez. I don't want to say why because I don't want to give a spoiler for the end for why I cried.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking at the end. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Okay. Mine, it was yesterday.
Oh,
And I mean, I'm not kidding you because I was looking at my list and I was like, I don't think anything made me cry because first of all, I should say, I'll go on record in saying I'm the biggest crybaby on the planet. Everybody knows that I can be talking about a commercial. I can talk
yeah,
about my dog who died in 2013 and I will start crying. It's just so
yep.
crazy and ridiculous. But I looked at the list this year and I was like, I don't remember like crying. You know, whatever it was the year before or the year before that, I read Migrations and I told everybody I ugly
Yes.
cried and happy cried through that book.
Yeah.
But I couldn't think of one. But however, I went to the library, my Flint Public Library, with my little 5-year-old grandniece, and I picked up a whole pile of picture books, and I picked up The Lantern House by Erin Napier. And I guess Erin Napier has a TV show or something like Home
Okay.
Renovation or something. I didn't recognize her, but when I looked it
No.
up, I was like, oh, I think she's famous, but I'm sorry, I didn't know her. And it's basically, I'm not kidding you. I cried real tears by the end of the book because it's about a house. Again, when inanimate objects become animated, there's something that just like tugs at my heart. And it's about a house that this young couple, they move into this brand new house, they have their child, and then their child grows up, and they plant trees and they do all this stuff around the house, and
Mm-hmm.
they paint and wallpaper and stuff. And then the child grows up, and then she moves off and has her family, and then the two people are in the house, and they're getting old, and then all of a sudden now the old lady is by herself and she's sweeping the porch, and then she's gone, there are no lights in the house, and then the house falls into disrepair, and then thank God, a new family moves in and fixes up the
Okay, good.
house. But I'm telling you, like, I'm
Yeah.
reading this thing like, oh, and the way the house says how sad and lonely it is,
Yeah.
like seriously, like a picture book. I'm such a crybaby, but it made me cry. So
No,
real tears.
I can see that. I can understand that because I do the same thing. If I find something touching, sometimes it will be a commercial, and I'll explain it to Mike, and I'll start getting choked up. And in my head, I'm like, I hope he can't hear that I'm about to cry. And he's just looking at me, and I'll start doing something else. I'm like, because I'm tough. I'm not going to
Yeah,
cry about a
yeah,
commercial.
yeah. All right. Number 11, the book
Yeah.
that made you happy.
Ah,
Now, for me, it is thanks to Tara because this
oh,
year has been a really tough year. And I was just like needing something to read that was going to put me in a better place. And she gave me sent me a copy of The Vinyl Cafe Celebrates by
yeah.
Stuart McLean, who I did not know. And from the first sentence of that book, I was in love. That book made me laugh and it made me tear up and it was
Yeah.
beautiful. And it was just like this warm hug through the whole book, and it made me so happy. And I am going to go back. I know there are other books as well. I will get them because it's like kind of like our Lake Wobegon. I love Stuart McLean. I know he's passed, but it just made me so happy, and I'm so thankful that you gave it to me because it hit me at the right time. So thank
Oh,
you.
that is amazing. Stuart McLean is amazing. He's
Yeah,
perfect for that.
yeah.
Mine is, I'm going to revisit from 2 questions ago. It's The Spoon Stealer by Leslie Crew.
Aw,
Yep. It just made me happy.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I really can't wait to read it. Do you think, because it was on the long list for Canada Reads, do you think it
Yeah.
ever could have held up on Canada Reads as a contender?
I don't know. I don't, against the others, any of the other four, if I picked, I'm not sure because they're all great books. Like they were really strong books this year.
Yeah.
And this one is a great book as well, but on a different, I'm going to say level, but that is not the correct word to use
Hmm.
because they're all just great books. But those other ones just dealt with issues that were just really prevalent at the time
Yeah.
that I don't know if just a happy feel good book
Yeah.
could hold up to them.
Yeah.
But I will be looking in. I think she is has quite a backlist of
Oh,
books. Yeah, so I'm going to be looking into more of her books.
okay.
Yeah. So next, number 12, most beautiful book you bought or received. So uh, this one's weird because I've trying not to buy as many books. I still have bought books this year. I'm trying to get through my books that I have. So I haven't bought that many, and none of them have been like true stunners. Like, some books are just beautiful.
Hmm.
I've looked through them. They're all kind of like, the covers are like, fine. They're fine. They're pretty books, but there's nothing beautiful. So I chose instead of most beautiful, how would I describe this? It is a copy of a Judy Blouin book called In the Unlikely Event. It's from maybe it's about 10 years old. And I found it just this past week and it is signed. So it is a signed copy of this
Yeah.
book. So that's why I chose it. It's not the most beautiful book, but because of that signature, which makes my little, and I have not read any of her adult books. I've only read her young adult books that she wrote that I read when I was like 10, 12 years old, and her children's books like the Super Fudge series and all that stuff. So this will be her first adult book of hers that I read. But when I saw that this was a signed copy, yeah, so that made my little heart happy, and I picked that up, and I'm actually really looking forward to revisiting, going back to her writing.
I think that's actually a great book to list under this category of most beautiful book, because it like you say, it has her signature in it. I think that's that's a really cool answer. It made me kind of go, oh,
thank you.
Now for me, one of my negative traits in life is that I lack patience. So I decided to start buying all of the Redwall books, which are juvenile books by Brian Jakes. And I had a million years ago, I read the first book, Redwall, and never read any of the series. And now that I'm retired, I thought I am going to read the entire series. There's 22 books. So I started buying them as I could find them. And it's the Firebird edition. So it's these little just paperbacks, they're not that expensive. And then I got impatient and I was like, screw that. And I went ahead and I went to Books A Million, which is in the United States, and I bought the entire set. So they're all lined up on my shelf. They just look so beautiful because I have all 22. And then when I was clearing out, now since I'm retired, I started cleaning out all my stuff. When I moved, I hadn't gone through everything. And I used to belong to the Redwall Club back, however many years ago now. And I had been gifted through the club these like baseball card size book covers of this edition. And I have almost all of them. So I'm using those. I put them in each of the books, and I'm going to be using them as the bookmark for when I read the book.
Oh, very cool.
And so now I'm just like, I have the little mini artwork on the book thing, bookmark kind of thing. And then I have the whole set, and they just, every day I look at them and they make me happy to look at them. So they're beautiful. So yeah. Nice. Cheap little paperbacks.
Yep.
Now, what books, this is number 13, our last question. Okay. What books do you need to read this year? And for me, because I'm a librarian, I rarely buy books. I bought more books in the last 3 or 4 years because doing this whole thing, a lot of the Canadian titles I can't get in the US, so I have been purchasing a lot more. But I decided to read my to-be-read list. And because I'm a mood reader, things that I had purchased over the last few years, I then decided I don't really want to read it now. So I've cleaned out my whole shelf, and I've donated a lot of those books to the library. Either I've read them already or I'm decided not to read them. I have 2 left on my to-be-read list this year. I'm not kidding you. And so now that doesn't count the Redwall books, and I have Anne of Green Gables series, and I have The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Like I have those 3 series that I need to read that I have. But other than that, I just don't like to have, like, it creates sort of this weirdly weird anxiety to me to have books sitting in my house that I have not read. So that's why I don't really buy them unless I'm planning to read them fairly soon. But the 2 I have left, I have Starlight Tour, The Last Lonely Night of Neil Stonechild. Which is, it was about the indigenous young man who was left to freeze to death somewhere in the plains, right? Was it Saskatchewan?
Saskatchewan.
Yeah, somewhere like that.
Yeah, I think in the prairies,
There's that one. And then the other one is The History of Canada in 10 Maps by Adam Schultz, who I've read all of his other books so far, and I love him as an author. And I'm a geography major and stuff, so I'm really excited to read this History of Canada in 10 Maps. So those are the last 2 books. Now, I've also either purchased or been gifted 6 books this year that I hope to read by the end of this year. So again, I don't carry over things too long and then decide I don't want to read them. So So
that's really good.
Yeah.
You're doing really good on that.
Yeah. Like I said, I know that all the listeners out there who have shelves and shelves and shelves of tons and tons of books on their to-be-read list, I really have great respect for you that you can do that. It's just, for me, it creates like this weird anxiety for me to have things sitting there. So that's why I can't do that. But I appreciate everybody who has like an incredible library at home. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm much the same way. I have more on my TBR than you, but I'm kind of trying to not buy any new books until I've read so many, at least 3 of the ones that are already on my shelf kind of thing. Because I also don't like just to randomly buy. So, but as for books that I need to read this year, so every year I do a goal of reading the long list for the Giller nominations of the previous year. So I try to, right? So we're in 2022. So I think I have 3 or 4 books left on the 2021 Giller long list left to read. So I would like to get those read by, ideally it would be like by September, October when they release the 2022 long list, but that may not happen. But definitely by January 1st of 2023.
Do you know which titles, basically any of the titles that you have left to read of those, maybe 3 or 4?
I have the list right beside me.
Oh, okay.
So I have Swimming Back to Trout River by Linda Rue Feng, which I have put a hold on the library, so I should be getting that within the next week or so. The Listeners by Jordan Tannehill. Fight Night by Miriam Taves. And We Jane by Amy Wall, which I can't remember anything about that book, actually. So
Is that one about like abortion or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that funny? I'm looking it up right now because I can't remember.
Because I'm like the others, I'm like, oh, that's the one that I'm like, I can't remember anything about it. But that's why I like to do this, because I read books that I may not have normally read, that would not have been on my radar. So those are the only 4 of my must read for the rest of the year.
Yeah, this one, it says, I just looked it up because I wanted to, a remarkable debut about intergenerational female relationships and resistance found in the unlikeliest of places. We Jane explores the precarity, I didn't know that was a word, precarity of rural existence and the essential nature of abortion. So that's the one.
Okay, well thank you for looking that up, because now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, that one sounded really good. So now, do you try to go back and listen or read, like, say, the long list for Canada Reads?
No, I do read some of the long list from Canada Reads. So I know that for this past year, the long list, I did go through and took note of some of them that I wanted to read that didn't make the short list.
Yeah.
But there were just some that I wasn't interested in, so I won't read all of them.
Yeah. I love that you go back and read the Giller books. Maybe I would like to do that, but that's a long list. I'm not sure
it's
that
a
I
long
would get
list.
through
You
it.
could try, the short list is like 6, right? Or 5 or 6.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll commit to the short list of the Giller books. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah. So, well, that's really cool. Well, I think that we've had a really good first part of 2022.
Yep.
I think we've read some really good things. And I have to say, I set up on my Goodreads, I set up a total of, I think, 75 books for this year, but it really just means I'm pretty much good for one adult book, like 4 a month. So really that's 48 books, right? The other ones, the reason I say I set it at 75, because I do read kids books and picture books. So if I tell people I read 75 books, they go, oh, that's good. And then I think, well, no, not really, because a lot of them are picture books, but it's okay. So I love them. So all right. Well, I think that's all we have to say about that. What we would love to do is have you let us know what you've read. If you want to answer any of the questions here and let us know what you really loved in your reading this year, we would love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. That would be fun to hear, actually.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our bookish journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing Canada Reads American Style wherever you listen. You can connect with the podcast and Rebecca on Instagram at Canada Reads American Style, and with Tara at On a Branch Reads. Until next time, keep reading.